I would like to welcome you all also. My name is Ananta. This is my wife, Maria, and we are deeply honored to be visiting here from Ananda Village in California, where we currently live. And I would like to read a passage from Paramahansa Yogananda's Whispers from Eternity. This is Yogananda's prayer demand. Make me anything, a Christian or a Hindu, anything to realize thee. Let me be Christian, Jew, Hindu, Buddhist, Mohammedan, or Sufi. I care not what my religion, race, creed, or color, if only I can win my way to thee. But let me be none of these, if that identity enmeshes me in an enclosing net of religious or social formalities. Let me travel the royal high road of realization which leads to thee. If I am traveling on some bypath of religion, lead me on to the one common highway of realization which leads straight to thee. Send me the sunshine of thy wisdom, that it lead me to the morning of my growing powers, and send me the moon of thy mercy to guide me rightly, if ever I am lost in the dark night of sorrow. I'm going to sit over there.
Okay. Hello, everybody. And as Ananta said, it's a joy to be up here for this weekend. And we've been here for a weekend, a Kriya retreat weekend. And for those of you who are perhaps new here today, Kriya is the highest meditation technique that we practice. And if you're at all interested in meditation, I encourage you to speak with Naya Swamis Gangamata and Daiva about meditation, or one of the staff here at the center. So our subject this morning is on dogmatism versus common sense, and we'll both be sharing a little bit today. There was a time when Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, was visiting India, and he went to a gathering. You know, if you've read the autobiography of a yogi, his autobiography, he loved as a child and young man to seek out different saints and sages, masters, to be in their company, to learn from them, to seek their advice. And as Swami Kriyananda has oftentimes said, it was really the advice, the consciousness of Yogananda that was sought out by these very same individuals, Yogananda being a very exalted soul. And that really showed and expressed, of course, at a very young age, the avatar that he was. So he went to this gathering where this teacher was and the disciples of this teacher, and he listened for a little bit. And this teacher, basically, he was quite full of himself and thought he was pretty together spiritually. He even referred to himself saying, "I am God." And at a certain point, not too far into it, because it was clear to Yogananda who this soul was on a consciousness level, he went up to the man in front of all his disciples, and he held up this mirror, and he said, "Is this God?" And the man was clearly very embarrassed. The teacher was very embarrassed, felt quite compromised in front of his disciples and students. And Yogananda had, after placing that mirror there and addressing him thus, just left, went out. But the man, being shocked and certainly eventually humbled, he was humbled. And he realized the truth in what Yogananda said, and he tore out after him and said, "Please, please forgive me." And he fell down on his knees and said to Yogananda, "You have saved me from a very serious delusion." So in the readings today, Jesus speaks very strongly, as Yogananda did, in uncompromising terms. Be aware of false prophets. Be aware of false truths. And to use and develop that inner knowing, our intuition, ultimately, common sense certainly, that allows us to better perceive and distinguish what is real, what is not real, and where is the truth in this? Where is the divine coming through this so-called channel or instrument or teacher? And to really try to understand, not on a mental level, not even through the senses, because they really come up quite short. We're very proud of being able to be together in one piece, looking out onto this world, using eyes, ears, nose, mouth, senses as we see them. But really they are quite limiting. They're only allowing us just the smallest view of the whole. And seeing that little part, we create whole religions around those little parts. We create whole dogmatic approaches and perceptions around those little parts. It gets so ingrown, it gets so small, because we are not opening up to the whole of it. We are not perceiving through all the senses. Every week we read at the beginning of these commentaries, truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. And because we hear it every week, probably just sort of, get on with the commentary kind of thing. But this is an incredible teaching in these words. When Yogananda visited India, when he went back after about 15 years in this country, and he, among saints and sages whom he visited, he went and visited the joy-permeated mother, Ananda Ma. And he got there and he could see right away her bliss state, just her spiritual aura and magnetism. But he wanted to be sure. And she was getting ready, being ushered by disciples. They were getting into a car. She was going to go visit some other disciples. And Yogananda went over and they exchanged greeting and whatnot. And then he sat in the car as she ready to leave. And he said, I checked her samadhi. He went into his own samadhi, and in that expanded consciousness, tuned in, and he saw, and he felt, and he experienced that it was real, who she was in that way, on that level. And so this is a realization, we can look at this example of Yogananda and very easily think, I'm not that, my consciousness isn't that high, I'm not going to be able to sort it all out, every part of it. But the masters live their lives. We have to remember this. They live their lives in such a way as to not say they're different from us, but the faculty they use, the perception they have, the truths that they realize, the life that they lead on this even mundane plane is an example to us, because these are the ways and the tools that work for us in these human bodies as well. So we can make those distinctions. We can discern what is real and what is not real. We can discern what is true and not true. It takes some work. We need to go within and realize that. But truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. Common sense is good. It's very good. It's very important. Let us get real and make sense of it. It's not that difficult. But even common sense is not enough. It's limiting. Ultimately, even common sense limits our ability to perceive. Swami Kriyananda, he said, common sense puts our feet on the ground, on the earth. It grounds us in reality, a relative reality. But we don't want to become earthly. And he explained that we don't want to become of an earthly, worldly, limited consciousness. We want to be that consciousness which is the soul, soaring to God, soaring in God, aspiring to the divine with broadened and ever broadening horizons of scope and vision and understanding and empathy. That's what is available to us, that very same consciousness and state of God that resides in the masters. There are outward signs, to be sure. Someone who is of enlightenment, who certainly is an avatar. I mean, there's a stature even, there's a radiance, there's a aura, there's a vibration. But it's also very confusing. It's very confusing to the senses that we hold so dear and highly. Yogananda came to this country dressed in orange robes and a turban in the 1920s. He had little Indian shoes on that were decorated with, little gemstones and curled up at the toes. How could people take him seriously? Some did, some sorted it out, but they did that more from an intuitive awareness. They could sort out the real from the unreal, the Leela from the soul essence. I remember one time someone just saying of Swamiji, I mean, the man wears glasses. How can he be a spiritual teacher? People think this way. They think that the divine, because perfect, needs to be in this perfect, however we define perfect, body or incarnation. I mean, glasses of all things, who cares, We don't see with our glasses. Krishna said to Arjuna, "Thou dost not see with mortal eyes. Thou canst not see with mortal eyes. I will give you sight divine." And that sight divine is that faculty of intuition within each one of us. So when we meet, when we meet truth, when we meet a teacher, we need to go inside and look for that feeling of consciousness in the heart. It resides as a calmness within our own being. It resonates with a calmness within our own being through which we can intuit the nature of that consciousness, the nature of that truth, and really understand it and understand it deeply. And we will feel a lift in our own consciousness when we're confronted with that. If we are open, if we are looking, if we are desiring, truly desiring to understand and know on a spiritual level. In the life of St. Francis, one of my favorite stories, very early on in his mission and the work that God gave him, he just had a couple of brothers alongside with him. And there was this one man, he was still largely serving and reaching out in the city to which he was born, Assisi in Italy. And this one man there, Bernard, he was of the nobility, very, very high class. And most people, practically all of them, in the town, ridiculed Francis, shouted at him when he was in the town square there trying to give a sermon and speak of God, this, soul that just was illuminated with divine light in his words and his speech and his character, even the way he looked. Again, I mean, if you looked at it with these eyes, you just saw this man in rags, just skin stretched across bone, kind of ragged and torn looking. Master even said, "Francis, he was an ugly man." And he was sick a lot of the time, one malady after another, his body just racked with ill health. But Master said he raised people from the dead. How can you argue with that, even if you don't understand it? Something is flowing through this soul. And Bernard, he could sense that, but it caused him great conflict, because if Francis was real, if Francis was true, it was going to take him outside of everything that he knew, everything that up to that point was real and near and dear, and his entire perception of the world and how it works. And so he thought, but it troubled him. It troubled him deeply. And he convinced Francis to come over to his house. He wanted Francis to come over and to stay with him just one night, because he had heard that Francis stayed up all night long in prayer to God. And he wanted to see if this was true. He wanted to see if what he heard was real. And all credit to him. He just didn't want to blindly follow what other people do, what other people say, as none of us should do. And Francis stayed, and Bernard prepared this room, a bed for Francis, a bed on the other side for himself. And Bernard thought to stay awake all night without letting Francis know and just see what happened. Well, Francis was waiting for Bernard to go to sleep because he wanted to get up and pray. And when each thought the other was asleep, when Francis thought that Bernard was asleep, he got up and knelt at his bedside and started to pray. And he prayed, "My Lord, my God, my all. My Lord, my God, my all." And he just kept repeating that all night long. And Bernard, after a time, couldn't resist. He couldn't resist the spiritual magnetism and grace flowing through this great soul. And he started to follow along with Francis in prayer. And he just kept repeating those simple words all night long. And when dawn just started to break, Bernard rushed over to Francis and fell at his side. And he said, "I want to be a brother." And Francis embraced him. But Bernard knew this, not by even the way Francis lived. I mean, it drew his attention, it drew his curiosity, but on another level, it repulsed him. Can I live like that? Can I be one of these? He wasn't attracted, he wasn't understanding Francis because of the way he dressed, because he fasted all the time, because he didn't eat much, because he wandered around in just a robe, oftentimes without shoes, because he said wonderful words, spoke a good sermon, this kind of thing. It wasn't enough, and Bernard knew that. And he discovered that part in himself, which is the intuitive faculty, which Jesus is talking about. And that's what we need to utilize more and more. That's what we need to live in. This world is going to look very different to us. And our relationships with people, our guru bhais, our teacher, our guru, is going to be very different and very exalted by this effort to live in our intuitive self, to see the world through our divine eye. Thank you.
So I wanted to just follow up on a few aspects that Maria's talking about. I've been with Yogananda since I was 19 years old, and I'm older than that now. And I've noticed something. When we explain what Ananda's teachings are, you want to give someone a short version, they want a one-sentence version. So we'll talk about the unity of religion and how all religions lead to the same place. And we'll talk about that all men are brothers and sisters under the one Father, Mother, God. That's a lot of times the one-sentence explanation of what we do, what we are and what we believe in. And I have noticed over these many, many, many years that almost everyone that I explain that to will say,
yeah, that's good. I believe in that. I like that. That's okay. You're okay with me. And that's a lot of people. I mean, I'm talking 40, 45 years. It's thousands. And then it's thousands and thousands and thousands if you start to multiply it out. And the interesting thing is that there aren't thousands of people that follow this path. Everyone gets the intuitive sense that this is right. Everyone knows that God is the father and mother of all religions, but they don't do anything about it, or a lot don't. You do. You came today. And a lot of people do. There's lots of Buddhists and lots of Christians, but there's a lot of people that don't act on that intuitive perception. And I'm really disappointed because there's so much suffering there. If you know that's true, why don't you explore that? Paramahansa Yogananda always said that there is no belief necessary to practice yoga and meditation. It is an experiment that you can perform on your own life. Learn to meditate, learn the Hong Sa technique, learn to do yoga postures, and see if you don't feel an uplifted point of spirit. He said you will. That story that Maria just told, can you imagine? I want to check her samadhi, you know? Can you imagine the number of teenage boys in this country that could use that, you know? I just want to check her samadhi, you know? Oh, cool. But anyway, the point is, Yogananda wanted to experiment. He didn't want to just, here's the teachings, okay, now you do it. That's the dogmatism that Swami is warning us against and that Master warned us against. It has no place in Ananda. It has no place in true religion. Yogananda often said, and Swami Kriyananda loved to echo this, but the saints are the true custodians of religion. That's who you look to. You look to the saints. You look to Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and the great saints in every religion. And you see, how did they live? How did they act? And that's why you want to be in that religion, is because you want to be like them. Everybody wants to be like Krishna. I mean, he had everything going on. He's good looking. He's got all the gopis. He plays the flute. He wins the war. He's the best. Everybody wants to be like Krishna. And it's true. Everybody wants to be like the risen Jesus. Friday's not such a good day, maybe. Let's go for part of Jesus, you know. But the point is, you want to be like them. You want to be like, you know, I don't know about you, but I took up yoga because I wanted to be like those guys. I wanted to be like Swami Kriyananda, Swami Muktananda, all these saints, these yogis. They were full of joy. They were full of compassion. They were truly human in their loving energy. I wanted to be like Gandhi. I wanted to be nonviolent. I wanted to be caring. I wanted to help people. That's what we want to be. And that doesn't have the dogmatism in it. The dogmatism is the beliefs when you don't have the experience. And that's what the reading was. We don't need that. And Yogananda does not ask us to believe things. There's a wonderful story. One time Paramahansa Yogananda met this fundamentalist preacher. Imagine him coming, you know, to America in 1920. And you've got fundamentalist preachers, and there's one of them engaged with Yogananda, and they debated. And his big thing was, if you sin, if you don't believe in Jesus, you go to hell and you burn forever. And Master would argue with him and say, that's not true. It can't be. It's not the God I know. But they argued and argued. So one day this preacher came to Yogananda. He said, Yogananda, I got big trouble. And Yogananda said, what is it? And he said, well, I've got a teenage son. And he is drinking and carousing, and he's just leading a horrible life. And I just don't know what to do. I've tried to talk to him, and I don't know what to do. And Yogananda said, he thought for a minute, he said, I know what to do. Okay, here's the deal. The next time he comes home drunk, I want you to open your oven and push him inside, lock the door, and turn it up to 600. And the minister was like, Yogananda, what are you talking about? I can't do that. It's my son. And Yogananda said, and isn't the Heavenly Father the Father of all the children? And could he ever put anyone in the fires of hell forever? And the minister saw it. This dogmatism was ridiculous. But you can't see it until when? Until you open your heart. It's his son that he's condemning to hell forever. You can't do that. So we need to use our hearts and our intuitive perception. And we need to plant constantly. And Jesus made the reference to thorns and figs and grapes and sticker bushes. And I've dug quite a few blackberries in my day. At times to excess. And the point is, what we plant, what do we want to plant? What do we want to grow? We want to be loving. We want to be kind. We want to be like Yogananda, Prem Avatar, incarnation of love. So how do we grow that crop? You plant it. Plant kind thoughts. Plant thoughts of forgiveness. That's why we read the affirmation every week. These are affirmations for self-healing. These are the thoughts, these are what you want to plant. Forgiveness, kindness, devotion. Plant them, water them with good actions, and they'll grow. And you'll see by your experience, not by your beliefs, then suddenly you'll believe it's good to forgive. No, you'll see. I receive, and I see in my life the tangible results. I see the samadhi because I plant samadhi seeds. I plant Hong Sa seeds everywhere. And in time, Hong Sa leads us to samadhi. Kriya leads us to samadhi. Kindness, plant it. And make it a point. It's spring. We've got to start planting. We got to get busy. We got to be planting heavily now. Thoughts of kindness, of calmness, of openness, of forgiveness. Dogmatism is a big pain. East and West. Hindu fundamentalism is just as bad as Christian fundamentalism. It's just as bad as atheistic fundamentalism. It's all very distasteful, very unpleasant. And what it does is it cuts out everyone in the world except the 2% that believe like you. It doesn't have a place. Not in the unity of religions. Because the real religious practice is divine love. It's infinite peace. It's calmness. It's ever-new joy, Ananda. It's the sound of Om. It's the light of God, the Jyoti, the inner light. It's wisdom. It's jnana. That's the aspects of God that we need to be planting and harvesting and realizing that that's the reality. Daiva said it at the purification. The reality is that state. The unreality is dogmatism, fixed. If you don't believe like I believe, you're wrong, you're bad. It doesn't work because the saints don't have that. Buddha loves Krishna. Krishna loves Jesus. They all just are in that one light. They all get along. It's the goofy disciples that cause all the trouble. And we need to wash our hands of that and live in that light. So plant seeds this week. Make sure you put in seeds of maybe new good habits, maybe deeper meditation, maybe deeper love, kindness, whatever it is. That's what we're here for. That's what the masters are offering us, of all religions. But Master Yogananda gives us a complete planting guide, and the other masters do too. In reality, you go where your heart is. You go what really works for you. And you plant and then you experience. And Yogananda, when he sat with Ma, he knew that is a great saint. She has wonderful samadhi. He also did that with the other saints that he visited. When he went to Therese Neumann, he did the same thing. He said, I want to see what her visions are like. So Master went into samadhi, and Therese Neumann would have the vision of Christ's passion. Each Friday, Christ would appear to her, and he would experience, this is a great saint. So let us do that too. Let us live in that. Let us test our religion in the cold, hard light of day, as Sister Gyanamata put it. God bless you all.
My heart to impart Nightingale, nightingale, sing of joy through the night. Let each tone silence grow, earth and heaven unite. Morning laughter, evening tears, snow and blossoms, all fade. Joy must sing in the night, to face change unafraid. Nightingale,